In the Recover Your Soul community, we talk a lot about the complexity of watching somebody else go through some very painful and difficult situations in their life. Maybe it's addiction, maybe it's depression, maybe they're just struggling with themselves. But when we recognize that sometimes those what feel like rock bottom moments, those complex challenges in life, can often be what is the catalyst to waking us up into our soul's journey, to recover our souls, to come back to ourselves and to recognize and see that there is so much more than what we have been looking at. And there's so much healing available when we turn to love over fear. And as we watch somebody else's journey, it's actually an opportunity for us to step more fully into our own spiritual awakening. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast and community, a spiritual path to a happy and healthy life. My name is Reverend Rachel Harrison. I started Recover Your Soul after having profound changes in my life from my recovery of alcoholism, codependency, people-pleasing, and control addiction. I was guided to share the tools and principles of spirituality and the Recover Your Soul process to help others transform their lives as mine was transformed. For us to overcome external circumstances, we need to turn the attention to ourselves, focusing on our inner change and healing. Positive results in our lives will follow. Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast and community. I'm Rev Rachel. Thank you for being here with me today. We've come here because we are being affected by somebody else in our lives, either by addiction or maybe there's mental health issues. Maybe it's just the heaviness of the world or the complexity and dysfunction of families. And maybe we've stepped into codependent or people-pleasing behaviors, trying to fix everything around us, not even realizing that we're falling into our own control addiction. It seems that it can be hard to understand sometimes when we're just trying to help the people around us. We're just trying to make it better for everybody else, that it is a form of its own addiction. And control is a way that we keep ourselves safe, that we try to make it better, that we're just trying to keep everybody from falling apart, trying to keep it from getting so hard for everyone. And one of the things that I hope that you're getting out of Recover Your Soul is an awareness of souls. It's an awareness of our soul's journey and the complexity of this experience that we have and the depth of emotions that come from it. And the awakening that's possible when we're ready to see ourselves in a new way. And what's interesting is that so much of my life I spent trying to get everybody else to see their part, trying to see what was going on for them, trying to fix what was happening with them, trying to help them, my husband and my kids in particular, to not have to suffer, to not have to have the hard road that they were walking. And yet, in the end, I was the one who was being hurt or wounded or suffering in my own right because I was trying to make it be something else instead of just being present with what is and having more capacity to understand that we all have these wild rides of a journey. And what if it's on purpose? And that when we actually see that sometimes that wall that we hit, that rock bottom, the addiction, the lost job, the divorce, the world that just completely implodes upon itself, it's an opening and a possible place where we can step into awakening. What if rock bottom isn't the end, but an opening to our awakening? That's a quote by Lauren Fay from her new book, Blurred Lines. I just interviewed her. And I loved that. Because I think so much that we are trying to save ourselves from the hurt and the hard parts, but it's really sometimes the hurt and the hard parts where the most grit and the most movement and the most rawness is opened up that allows us to get past what those beliefs and those stories and all that we've been experiencing in our lives, to see ourselves and the world around us only through the eyes of love and not through the eyes of fear. And it's not as so simple just to be able to say, well, just see everything through the eyes of love, just spiritually bypass everything and just pretend like this isn't hard. No, it's hard. It's complicated. It's hard. But I've been recognizing how this journey that I've been on in my own soul journey, my own recovering my own soul, my own bringing myself back to myself, and how again and again and again I have this gratitude that the word soul was given to me when I was asking my higher power, my spirit, what I was supposed to do, not only for myself, but as a way to share with others this journey that I had been on that was so profound through 12-step, through my own recovery of alcoholism, which if you've been listening to the podcast, you know the story, which is that I never admitted my own alcoholism. I was positive that my husband was an alcoholic and that his drinking was absolutely tearing our lives apart in many ways. But I wasn't willing to look at my own for a long time until I was tearing my own life apart through my own addictions. And the addiction was not just drinking. A major addiction was control. A major addiction was codependency. It was this obsessive feeling that I had my fingers in everybody's business, trying to take care of, fix, manage, control everything around me to the place where I had completely lost myself, had no idea who I was, and all I did was obsess about everybody else. That's an addiction. Addiction to control, trying to make it all be a certain way. I think I'm God in those situations. Did I think I was God in those moments? No, absolutely not. I thought I was helping. I thought I was trying to save us. But in the saving us, I was part of the drowning. And so when I got off of my high horse, my self-righteousness, and quit poking everybody else and thinking I was trying to make all of their lives different, and I started really looking at myself 8 years ago when I finally admitted that I was an alcoholic in my own right, stepped into the rooms of AA, stepped into the rooms of Al-Anon, and started working a program that allowed me to see beyond all of the finger pointing that I had been doing, wanting so desperately for everybody else to be okay. And when I stepped into the spirituality that I had been gathering for all those years, for those of you who've been listening to the podcast, you know that I was raised Buddhist, that I attended a Unity metaphysical church for over 20 years. I had been reading the books. I'd been doing the studies. I'd been doing the meditations. I was not living the principles because I was so consumed with this concept that they needed to be better or okay or without suffering or without difficulty for me to be safe and to be okay. And I think that's common. I think if you're here, you feel that way. And it's understandable. And one of the words I use a lot is, of course. Of course, this is the system that God set up in you. But when we start to look at our lives from a new perception, and we start looking at what is our rock bottom, instead of looking at what everyone else's rock bottom is, it doesn't even have to be a rock bottom. What is the part of us that gets to such a place where we can see with clarity that whatever this is, it isn't working. And it's because we have a soul's journey. And the more that I've grown into Recover Your Soul, and the more that the 9 steps have revealed themselves to me, and they continue to reveal themselves to me, I continue just to be like, I don't even know the word for it. I'm blown away at the words that I have been using, that even I, in my using them over the years, haven't understood the depth of healing that they offer, because there's always more layers to be revealed. There's always more for us, not because of this life that we're in, that we're supposed to be creating some level of perfection, but because there's this opportunity for us to step more fully into our soul's experience. And this journey that we're on in this lifetime, which is just a short part of something so much greater still, so much more. And again, what I hope in Recover Your Soul that you understand is I'm not trying to tell you a way to think or a spiritual journey to follow, or that what I think is the only way. Take what you need and leave the rest. Take what feels good to you, and if it doesn't, let it go. And stand in what feels good to you. My gratitude is that through all these things that I've been gathering for all these years, I've been able to pick the parts that really resonate with me. And as I've grown in my metaphysical ministry as a metaphysical minister and studied more and more and more. So just, oh my God, the amount of information that I've taken in over these past 8 years. I would have, for someone who didn't like school, you would never think that I would love studying as much as I do. I am constantly bringing things in, and the essence is always the same: love, compassion, forgiveness, grace, presence, being connected to something greater still. And then it's spoken in a million different languages and a million different paths. There is no one way to spirit, to source, to God. And we fight over the way because we want certainty. Well, there is no certainty. The only certainty is that when you truly step into your soul's purpose, into your own soul's journey, you feel a knowing that is beyond understanding. And that knowing is that you are not separate from, but one with a divine energy and source. And that this soul's journey is complicated and weird and wild and crazy and full of so much complexity. And the reason why I drank was I drank over how uncomfortable I felt in my own skin. So when I have people in my life who are addicts, I still have 2 adult kids who are in their own addiction journey. I still have a husband who may not be drinking now, but is in his own addiction recovery journey. And they look very different than mine. And one of the things I want to talk about today is about allowing everyone else to be in their experience in a way that empowers you to be in your own experience. You know, I shared with you that recently Bodhi had a situation in early October where he hit a wall. He hit one of those moments where he had to make a decision for himself. And I think that we all have those moments, in whether you're talking about addiction from substances or you're talking about addiction to other human beings and codependency, or whether you're talking about behaviors, or there's so many ways that we are trying to numb, trying to shut down. And it's all because we're just trying to feel a certain way in our bodies, because it is hard to be a human being. So the beautiful thing is that he made a decision in that moment to step into sobriety, and not only to step into sobriety as he had in the past, but to step into recovery that was right for him. And, you know, I've been hoping for years that he would attend meetings or move into the rooms like I did when I first got sober those first years. I couldn't have done it without AA. But that's not the way that it goes for everybody. Recovery looks different for everybody. But he has stepped into the rooms, and he is moving into recovery in a way that feels right for him, and at this time. And it's really fun to watch. And it's beautiful to witness this human being who I just have so much respect for as a human, and so much respect for as a soul. And the soul's journey is so full of complex situations that we can't understand on this level. I don't know all the levels that are his journey to have, but what I'm witnessing in him is his willingness to be in how it feels to him, which some days are not that great. Some days he's terrified. Some days he's feeling super optimistic. And this journey that he's on is his own journey to have. You know, I recently was talking to somebody about how do you support the people in your lives when they're going through their own recovery in a way that is unique for every situation. And it kind of goes with the enabling episode that I recently did. Hi, it's Rev Rachel, and I'm just taking a quick break to remind you of a couple ways to help support your Recover Your Soul journey. First is that on the recoveryoursoul.net website, on the podcast page, there's a search bar. You're welcome to go in and search any topics or any subjects that you're interested in. And with over 300 episodes, you're sure to find a couple episodes that will support what you're looking for. I also invite you to work the Recover Your Soul 9 steps to healing and awakening, either by working directly one-on-one with me with coaching, or at your own pace using the video modules where it still feels like you're with me, but you get to do it on your own time. Back to the episode. We have this opportunity at every moment to look at the relationships in our lives through a clean lens, if we are clean and pure in our own experience. It's only natural that we're constantly looking through the perceptions in which we have established for our lifetime. And many of those perceptions are based on fear and control that we're trying to save them from. We have ideas of how we think it should be. We're trying to manipulate, manage the situation so that it will come out a certain way. And ultimately, we want it to come out a certain way so that we feel safe. And what I hope that you're getting out of the Recover Your Soul process is this understanding that we can create safety in our own experience, regardless of what's happening with the people around us, because we are choosing to let go of judgment, because we are choosing to step into a level of seeing their soul's experience outside and beyond their human experience. And that we have faith and trust that all of this is playing out on some larger scope than what we could possibly understand. But we can hand them over to something greater still and move more fully into our own awakening process, our own journey. Because the more that I interact with the people in my family and watch their experience for what it is, completely allowing it, and allowing is a word that comes up a lot in spirituality. I've mentioned before that right now I'm reading The Way of Mastery, which I love so much. It's a channeled work similar to A Course in Miracles. And they speak of allowing a lot, which is different than accepting. We talk a lot about acceptance in the rooms of Al-Anon or in the recovery world. To accept means that you don't have to like it, but you're accepting it. Allowing it is going one more level. It's almost moving from empathy, which I've talked about, which is where you feel people's feelings, but you still want to do something about their feelings, maybe even want to take on the emotions that they're feeling. You want to save them from them, that you'll carry the weight or the burden of those feelings to try to save it from them, that because you're feeling it so deeply. And compassion moves to a place where you can feel with that level, with that depth, with that intensity, but you're actually not taking it for them. You're handing it back to them with the trust that they can indeed handle it. And it's the same when we move from accepting to allowing. That accepting on some level is us still having a judgment on it. Allowing releases the judgment and says, almost like you're allowing it, like you're releasing the judgment. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to understand it. It doesn't have to make sense to you. It doesn't have to play out in the way that your world is playing out, but you're allowing them to have it play out in their world for what it is for them and trusting that it's part of whatever their journey is. Now, this is very intense because, of course, their journey bumps up against our journey. And it's not about a space where you allow to such an extent that it harms you, because that's not the point at all. The point is to get your fingers out of everybody else's business. And through this work with Bodhi, what's interesting is this going back to how much do you support, how much do you, what is enabling, how much do you support? Some groups say they've made their bed, let them lay in it, let them figure it out for themselves, and you're supposed to stand way back and watch. And I think that there's a big shift that's happening in the awakening culture that is around it being outside of the black and white rigid lines. And that we actually, in each one of our moments, do have the capacity to make choices that are right for us in each moment, that are from our higher self, our greater understanding of who we are and what is right for us in that moment. And in some of those moments, it might really mean that someone has wreaked some serious, serious damage and that they really need to kind of sit in their consequence. Not as judgment, not as being a bad person, but sometimes that discomfort is the only thing that will elicit change, because it has to get that hard, that bad, that difficult for them to be willing to do whatever it takes to get better. And again, getting better looks a lot of different ways. I just watched a Netflix last night, and I'm going to get the name of it wrong, and I'm not going to stop recording to look for the name, but it's In Waves and War, I think it's called. And it's an incredible documentary around vets Navy SEALs in particular, who went to deployment after deployment after deployment in Afghanistan, and the amount of incredible war, PTSD, difficulty, and how so many vets that come back from being in those environments where this was their purpose in life, this was who they were, this was their absolute drive of their being. And then they come back and they don't do well in the outside world, and they're very confused, and they have a lot of brain damage from having their heads knocked around so many times, right? And they're really struggling in their families, and they have violence, and they drink too much, and they have all these situations that are very real, and they want to die. There's 22 people every day who commit suicide from the effects of being in combat, which is, my heart just breaks thinking that that's the statistic. It's far greater than the actual number of people who die in combat. The documentary, I didn't think I was going to be talking about this today, but the documentary is around people who use hallucinogenics, and not just using them recreationally, but like actual therapy, hallucinogenic therapy, and going in and allowing their mind to experience whatever it needs to look at, to look behind those dark doors. And for many of them, what the documentary showed was to touch the tender place in their heart that had such trauma as a child, that it set up the belief systems that they have lived out of that no longer serve them. Does this sound familiar? This is Recover Your Soul. These are the steps we're doing in Recover Your Soul. And then part of this therapy that they do is then also to do a psychedelic that is a heart-opening one, where they look at that darkness, but then they have the experience of being connected to something greater still, and they recognize that they're okay, that all is well, that whatever they went through, whatever they experienced, whatever they did, that there is an opening to be forgiven in it, that we can see beyond the human experience and into the soul experience, and they're having profound, profound healing. And it's not, just this particular group. This is happening in so many different ways across the board. So when we look at the people in our lives who are struggling with their own identity, they're having a spiritual, emotional crisis of who they are, and they're making choices to take substances or to do behaviors that are not healthy for them, it is an opportunity for them to be willing to look at themselves in a way where they can find true depth of forgiveness within themselves. And of course, we want that for them. Of course, we want that for them. But the more that we can step out of somebody else's recovery and out of our fingers of what we think that needs to look like for them, and hold on to, and I talk about this a lot in us talking about visioning and the law of attraction, you hold on to the vision of what you want, not in a thing, but in feelings, as if it's here today. So when I think of Bodhi in his situation where he is, it's not about monitoring how many meetings he went to, or, what's going on with his sponsor, or what's going on with his work, or, none of that is actually mine to carry. Those are all his responsibilities. And if he doesn't pick up those as his responsibility, because I'm carrying them for him, where is he supposed to step in and take responsibility for himself? How is he supposed to do that for himself if I'm monitoring him or checking in or making him feel like he's doing it for me? He's not doing it for me. He's doing it for him. But when I can allow myself to not have my mind scramble into the fear and to stay in love, I can say things like, I'm so happy and grateful that Bodhi's opening up to his heart. I'm so happy and grateful that he's willing to do this work to look into some of those dark places. And I'm so happy and grateful that he may be able to see himself through the eyes that I see him, or that he can see himself through the eyes that Spirit sees him. I'm so happy and grateful that he has the determination to do this work right now. That's all that matters, because ultimately I'm tuning my dial to see the soul within him and not the destructive or pained or addictive outside that is part of his soul's experience. What I thought was so amazing, going back to the documentary, was these guys who were, their life's purpose had been being SEALs and going to war and doing all these really, really intense missions. And to see them go through this process and to have their hearts open and have the light come back in their eyes, to see them at the end of this documentary to say that they wanted to live again. That's the experience that I had in my own recovery. I wasn't at war. I didn't have it nearly as bad as they did, but I wanted to die every day at the end of my addiction. And not because of the alcoholism, but because how I felt in my heart. And so I look around at the people in my life who are still on their journey, and I can feel for them. I can have that compassion, not the empathy, but the compassion and the allowing to see for them that this is their soul's journey to have. And that if I can love them unconditionally enough to let go of the judgment, but to be able to speak from a place in every interaction that is both boundaried and supportive and loving and allowing and compassionate and kind, but doesn't let anybody walk all over me and is truthful, that's our soul's experience. We all have this capacity to expand from that place and to get out of the limited belief systems that we all are running from. Our brains are running on these belief systems that have been created for so long that we're now all just kind of bopping our head out of the water and saying, oh, I don't have to be drowning. These systems are old. And again, going back to the documentary, it's so interesting. You know, the amount of trauma that some of these now adult men experienced as children from adults who weren't well. That we are here in this time breaking generational cycles around violence and addiction and abuse and pain and not accessing feelings. We're breaking those cycles within our families, and it starts with you. It starts with you turning to yourself and recognizing that whoever's in your life who is on their own journey is on their own journey, and that we can allow them to have whatever that experience is. Now, do I hope that this is it for Bodhi? As I've said in the past, there was one little moment in time when Alex found out that Lexi was pregnant where he was sober for a minute too. Do I wish them to be sober? Of course I wish them to be sober. I can't say how much I wish that I hadn't waited till I was 48 to take alcohol out of my life, but that was my journey. That was my experience. And what I can say is I have gratitude because it got me here. Do I want them to get here faster than I did? Of course I do. But that's not actually mine to determine. But the more that I step into my own healed state, the more every single one of these interactions in my life feels different to me. And it doesn't mean that life doesn't continue to be lifey. Rich and I actually had a conversation this morning that was very real about how we still have a communication gap. But again, what I come to is our ability to sit with each other and, across from each other with openness. There's a safety. There's an openness and a safety to hear what the other person is saying. And I don't always like what he's saying. I don't always get it. But instead of that part of me that used to push and try to force it to be something else or win or make him see from my perception, there's an allowing and an opening from my heart to be curious about what his soul's journey is. Who is he? What is he here to learn? How can I open up enough? How can I allow enough to actually see what he's actually saying instead of what I interpret from it? And the fascinating thing about us is that in the end, what we're both always saying is, I love you. I love you, and I want you to be exactly who you are, and I want to be loved and seen for exactly who I am, and I want us to figure out how to not have it be so easy to scratch the surface and have an old wound come up. Can't we get past that? In the end, that's what we're saying. And then every time we end up having one of these conversations, I allow myself to feel in a way that I couldn't ever allow myself to feel before because I didn't feel safe. And if you don't feel safe, being able to feel your feelings, it may not mean that you're sharing with them the feelings. It means you're safe enough to feel the feelings within yourself. That's something to look at. But I always come back to looking at it for me. And what is it that I'm saying? What is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I'm experiencing that is going back to another layer of those belief systems that I continue to release more and more and more and more? And again, it always comes down to there's no one there for me. I'm not enough. I'm not safe. I can't trust anybody. And, those things aren't actually true anymore, but they still live in me on some level that is being revealed to be healed. So as the people in my life are having these journeys of their own human being life that their soul is experiencing, the more that I trust the soul, the more I feel comfortable in allowing whatever it is to take place. And the more that I can move into the trusting, that space where you feel connected to the universe, you know that you're held, you feel a knowing that you're okay, that I can see that everything is ultimately for their soul's journey, for their soul's experience, for their soul's learning. And I never think it's for punishment. I don't take the spiritual journey as something that's like karma, like, oh, you totally screwed it up last time, so you're going to have to feel that pain this time. I think that is coming from fear. I think that ultimately we get to step into this experience as a soul, and the experience is very intense and has a lot of complex layers to it, more than we even can begin to understand. But when we shift our energy, when we shift our awareness, when we open to this fullness of who we all are, and we stop trying to control the people and their journeys and their lives, we come back to ourselves and we learn about ourselves. And in learning about ourselves, we release and we open, and there's a kindness and a compassion that opens, and that gives the people around us the opportunity to trust their own journey, their own self. And again, seeing these vets who were in such pain have a heart opening gives me such hope that this is possible for all of us. You don't have to go through some psychedelic journey to do it. This is what the 9-step process has done for me. The more that I'm willing to open my heart and to look at myself in the depths of this spiritual process and journey, the more healing, the more awakening, the more releasing, the more kindness, the more compassion, the more that I can be here and actually enjoy my life, which I do. Part of what's happened in all the situation with Bodhi was that I asked him to help me with my website. So if you've been to my website and you saw my website's a little bit different, in a way to be able to support him and help him, as we talked about in the enabling episode, I'm not going to just give him money. He has some pretty intense, fabulous skills as a marketing director, which he did for years and years and went to school for marketing and video, and he's incredibly good at it. So I've offered some projects to him to be able to help him financially, and then also for me to get something back. And it's been so much fun because I'm not doing it for I'm not doing it to control him. I'm actually doing it because I would love for him to help me for years, but he's been so busy. And this ability for us to connect in this way has been so beautiful because he's not my son. He's my friend. He's my soul family, as is all of my family, my husband and my parents and Alex and so many other people in my life. If we see each other as being in the soul family, that we have this opportunity to connect with each other in ways to help us grow. And when I have this opportunity to work with him in that way, it just feels so good because I'm witnessing all of it and I'm allowing all of it. And in allowing all of it, I'm allowing myself to feel what it feels like to me, and I'm allowing myself to heal too. So you might see some different things on the website or in my social media. That is Bodhi. I feel so grateful that I have him on my team now to help out a little bit. But I'm just grateful to have these people in my life, these relationships that are helping me to learn more about myself, for me to expand as a soul for myself. And that my rock bottom, which has been a lot of different ones along the way, has been an opening for my own awakening. And for that, I am so grateful. So as you listen to this and as you're working your own process and as you're opening your own heart and as you're looking at the people around you and you're just shifting how you see it just a tiny bit, it's allowing you to give space for them to be in their own experience without the judgment, without fear. And the allowing means that sometimes we're allowing people to really go through some really painful and difficult experiences. But if we see it through the spiritual lens and through the eyes of a soul, we can release and let go of our control. And we can trust and know that they are indeed being held by something greater still, and that they are in charge of their own journey, that they are responsible for their own well-being and their own spiritual path to walk, and that we can walk alongside them. And sometimes those paths look very different. Until next time, namaste. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and being part of the Recover Your Soul community. If today's episode spoke to you and you'd like to connect with the community even more, I invite you to join us on the first Monday of every month for the free online support group on Zoom. It's from 6 to 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, where I share a little bit more on the Recover Your Soul journey, and then we break into small groups. You can register at recoveryoursoul.net, and if you've registered in the past, be on the lookout in your promotions folder for the reminder email and link. I'd also love to invite you to listen to the Recover Your Soul bonus podcast every Friday, either as an Apple Podcast subscriber or as a Patreon member. On Patreon, you can become a free member and have access to new episodes for the first week, or you can support this community with the tier that you choose. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and join the private Facebook group for more connection with this amazing community. I hope you'll visit the website recoveryoursoul.net, and you can sign up for emails so that you can be up to date with everything that's going on, and maybe even join me for a retreat someday. Lastly, I thank you for sharing this podcast and community with anyone that you think that might enjoy or learn from it. I also thank you for giving me 5 stars on any platform that you listen to and writing a review so that others can find the Recover Your Soul community too. Until next time, namaste. The Recover Your Soul podcast and its content is for educational purposes only and is not allied or representative of any organizations or religions. It's based on the opinions and experience of Reverend Rachel Harrison. Recover Your Soul claims no responsibility to any persons or entity for any liability, loss, damage, or cause alleged to be caused directly or indirectly as a result of its use. Applications or interpretations of the information represented herein. Take what you need and leave the rest.